Hello everybody, today it's getting nerdy. A hobby of mine is going to flea markets with my girlfriend and looking for old cameras. Most of the time it's always the same East German cameras that I find. But a few weeks ago I stumbled upon this Zorki 4K. I instantly saw that it was broken. So the shutter was working, but the curtains were not. One of the bands that holds the shutter was already clearly ripped off, so it wouldn't have been possible to take any pictures with it. Nevertheless, I always loved the design of the Zorki cameras. In particular, this one even has an advanced lever, so I decided to buy it and try to fix it. In case it didn't work, which to be honest was what I expected, I would just use it as decoration. Because look, it looks quite cute. I've always wanted to open a camera and check if I could understand the inside of it. I tried to organize everything as well as possible and started by opening the camera and taping screws onto paper with a sketch of the camera to remember their positions.
So this is the crazy plan. Under these, there are all parts of the camera. So I painted this and put them on the right spots. Yeah. That's the current situation. Let's see if we can fix it.
Other mechanisms were sorted in order so that I could remember how to reassemble them. For example, the advanced lever. Disassembling the whole thing was easy, but I expected that. Everybody knows that reassembling it will be pure horror. First mission was fixing the shutter curtains. At the beginning we tried to re-glue the old curtains, but we used superglue, which wasn't very smart because superglue becomes brittle once it hardens. And as you can guess, hard plastic like glue is not very helpful in delicate mechanisms like shutter curtains. We also needed ages and the help of a kind Reddit user to find out how to tension the springs so that there would be enough tension on the curtains. We glued them and noticed that things wouldn't line up perfectly, but we thought that we hadn't constructed the curtains correctly inside the camera. After assembling and disassembling the whole mechanism at least 20 times, we finally came to the conclusion that we had glued the curtain holders incorrectly. So we measured again, scrapped off all the old plastic parts and glued it again. Of course, the first and the second time the measurements weren't correct. We reached a point where the curtain holders were basically ruined. They were never good to begin with, and at that point they just fell apart. That was also the moment when I changed my tactics. First of all, new glue, removing all leftover plastic from the camera. Second, we needed new curtain holders. We searched for replacement material, and Lisa luckily had the idea to use the drawstrings from one of her sweaters.
So good news, we found this pullover. Lisa gave us this pullover, and as you can see, there were these things inside. And I think we can use them. We will try.
We could cut them to size, slightly burn the ends, and glue them again. That was the first time the mechanism was almost working. The only problem was that the curtains were still a tiny bit too long. So I fixed that, and finally everything worked properly. This whole task took me 2 days with many hours of work.
It's working.
It probably sounds much less complex here, but it was a hell of a pain. So the camera's broken part should be fixed at this point, but the camera looks like this. So definitely no time to celebrate yet. After figuring out the curtain part, I was sure it couldn't get harder, but the camera proved me wrong. In general, it was very hard to find any tutorials online because most people were working on Zorki 4s or 1, 2 or so. But yeah, the Zorki 4 and the 4K are more different than I initially expected. Also, I had no experience with this kind of repair, and this camera is definitely not one you should start with in this hobby. After fixing the curtains and adding the top plate and some other minor parts, the next step was to install the slow speed escapement. This is needed for all slow shutter speeds. It's basically a set of gear that slow down the mechanism so that the second curtain takes more time before it slides in front of the film. Anyway, I cleaned the slow speed escapement. Then you have to install it and carefully connect it to the release mechanism with a hook that controls the second curtain. Figuring out the correct placement and tension was so frustrating that this was the first time I seriously thought about giving up. Fortunately, after a lot of trial and error, I got it working. So, this is the camera right now. This thing is installed. We only needed like 3 hours or so, maybe 4, with 1 hour this morning. So this was almost as painful as the curtains, but yeah. So it is like this. You rewind. That hurts. And after that, you can choose the time. For example, right now it's on 1 second, I think. So it's like, should be 1 second. And if I rewind again, I can choose another time. For example, let's just take, I think this one should be 1000. And as you see, it's very quick. So it should be working right now. All the long exposure times are set with this thing, but the short exposure times are all have the same time, but a different amount of space in between the two curtains. So it's always the same time, but different spaces. That means for 125 and 1000, it's the same travel time for the curtains, but there's a smaller gap between them so that the film is exposed for a shorter time. The next steps were fairly simple, or so I thought at this time. I installed the flash sync mechanism. It also needed to sit on top of the release. The rangefinder was added as well. Then I had to put the top cover back on. To do that, I had to figure out the film advance lever. It wasn't too hard to understand, but extremely difficult to install. You have to wind the spring around one part and connect it.
Things I absolutely hate about old cameras are springs like that. It's so freaking annoying to adjust these. I absolutely hate it.
Then you have to insert a pin into a hole to hold the whole mechanism. I didn't know that in the beginning, and I was always holding the whole mechanism with my fingers, and that's not how you should do it. After that, you put the top plate over it, a lever on top, and then a part that connects to the spring underneath so that you can screw it. It became much easier once I realized I could hold the spring in place with a small stick or pin. For that I used a nail and removed its head to keep it in position. I screwed everything together and it's done. Just kidding, nothing was working. To advance the film I always had to turn the lever twice. I had completely forgotten about the vertical alignment in the rangefinder. Somehow the slow speed escapement also broke while closing the camera. So back to the beginning. I unscrewed every part until only a clean top plate remained. Then I fixed the vertical alignment, which was already broken when I got the camera, but I forgot it, but now it's perfect. I then reinstalled the slow speed escapement again, the flash sync, and then the advanced lever along with the top cover. Oh, and in between I also installed the film rewind mechanism. I almost forgot about that. I mean, in general, I'm skipping a lot of parts here. It was way more complex than what I tell you. There were many more little steps and so on, but that would be just too boring. Then I added the front of the camera and the lens mount. For that I had to test it with the lens attached to screw it in the right orientation. I mounted the lens and for the first time it felt like I could actually use this camera. Everything worked except the lens. It was still stuck. So I searched for a tutorial, opened it, cleaned it, screwed it back together, and it was perfectly working again. Sounds easy, but it definitely wasn't. But it was totally worth it. The camera feels amazing now. This one is buttery smooth. When I look through it, everything is sharp. It's just super nice. I hope that I can find a self-time lever somewhere on a flea market, or maybe friends have one or so, to fix the hole in the front of the camera. Will it work? Time to test it, I guess. I actually don't know what to say. It's not only that the camera works, the pictures look incredible. I love how the highlights glow, and I am honestly impressed how sharp it is. Most of these pictures were taken with an open aperture of 3.5 and they still look so good. Well, I guess I have a new camera. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, bye bye.